Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll look at the science behind EQ and how it's become a critical concept in both psychology and neuroscience since the 1990s. Emotional intelligence, or EI, refers to the ability to perceive, understand, manage, and use emotions effectively in ourselves and in others. And it is contrasting with IQ, which focuses more on cognitive skills. This lesson's goal is to educate every viewer on the scientific foundations of EI, including its historical development, theoretical models, measurement methods, neurological basis, empirical evidence, and the ongoing controversies surrounding it. But our focus is on its relevance for understanding human behavior and performance. The concept of EI was formally introduced in 1990 by Peter Salovey and John Mayer, and they defined it as the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings and emotions, to discriminate among them, and to use this information to guide one's thinking and actions. The definition was put forward as an ability-based construct analogous to general intelligence, focusing on emotional processing skills. So it is a practical set of skills that you can use to analyze your emotions, the emotions of others, and determine what the best path forward considering those dynamics. In 1995, Daniel Goleman popularized the term with his book, which was called Emotional Intelligence. It expanded its application to leadership, organizational behavior, and personal development, and emphasized practical competencies. And this historical context, looking at the history of how emotional intelligence has evolved over time, is crucial because it highlights the evolution from a theoretical construct to a widely studied field with ongoing research. And the theory and the application of emotional intelligence is being continually refined and improved. Salovey and Mayer's initial work linked EI to Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, particularly social intelligence, which would set the stage for subsequent models and measurement. So EI is conceptualized through several models, each with distinct scientific approaches. The three main models are outlined here. The ability model, developed by Mayer, Salovey, and Caruso, is seen as more scientifically rigorous, with the Mayer, Salovey, Caruso emotional intelligence test, or the MSCEIT, assessing performance in emotional tasks. So this is considered the most scientifically rigorous and accurate. The trait model, which was proposed by Petrides, focused on self-perceived emotional abilities measured by tools like the Trait Emotional Intelligence Questionnaire, which has been cited in over 2,000 studies and shows high reliability and validity. And then we have mixed models like Goleman's, which are practical for workplace applications, but less focused on scientific measurement, blending abilities with personality traits. Recent research, such as Gilead et al., published in 2023, suggests that EI may comprise distinct components like the emotion knowledge component, EIK, and the emotion processing component, EIP. EIP involves rapid bottom-up processing, indicating an ongoing evolution in the conceptualization. All right. So how do we measure EI? Measuring an emotional intelligence is actually a very complex task because it's both subjective and it's multidimensional. There are over 40 instruments that have been developed from 1995 to 2020. The most used being the EQI, the SSRI, MSCEIT, and others. Categories into ability-based, which were 23 instruments, trait-based, 2 instruments, mixed model 9, and then others. So what is an ability-based test? These aim to measure actual abilities. The MSCEIT includes 141 items in multiple choice format and assesses perception, facilitation, understanding, and the management of emotions. Reliability, which is an important measure in scientific instruments, ranges from a 0.49 to a 0.96. You want at least a 0.7, so a 0.96 is very high. And retest reliability is also very high. The self-report measures range from a 0.89 to a 0.92. So again, very reliable. But self-reports are prone to bias, as individuals with low EI may overestimate their skills. There's psychometric properties. Validity is supported by convergent correlations and criterion validity predicting outcomes like job performance. So gender differences can be noted, and women can score higher in some instruments, requiring further research into the contextual factors. So these instruments may have bias towards certain groups, and so they don't measure everybody equally, and that can be an issue. Theory-based construction for more robust assessments is needed, and so continual research is being done to try and refine these assessments. The takeaway from this little section right here, there are a lot of technical terms. There are a lot of different ways you can assess emotional intelligence, and a lot of them are very good. Others maybe not quite so good, and some are prone to bias. So when you're picking an instrument to measure emotional intelligence, you should be mindful of its strengths and its weaknesses and determine which one is best for you and your purposes. All right, let's take a look at the neurological basis of emotional intelligence, which is rooted in brain structures involved in emotional processing. The research suggests that the limbic system, which is comprised by the amygdala, the hippocampus, and other midbrain structures, is the control center for emotions in human beings. The amygdala is critical for emotional responses, especially fear and pleasure. But at the same time, the hippocampus links emotions to memory formation, storing experiences from early life before verbal abilities develop. So it attaches emotion to early experiences. The brain has three functional layers. There's the brainstem, which is involved in autonomic functions, the limbic system, which is the emotional brain, and the neocortex, which is the rational brain. So emotional responses are milliseconds faster than cognitive responses. So your emotional responses will occur first before your logical mind can catch up. And that means it's very, very easy to have an emotional response, which you may or may not regret later, when you let the emotions guide your responses rather than waiting for your logical brain to help navigate the system so that you respond appropriately. The limbic system sends crisis warnings before the neocortex processes information. And this interplay, it explains why EI involves both recognizing emotions, which involves your limbic system, and regulating them, which is the neocortex, with millions of connections allowing information to flow between emotional and rational brains. Some recent studies using fMRI have shown specific brain activity patterns associated with emotional processing, supporting the neurological basis of EI, but more research is needed to map these connections fully. The empirical evidence supports EI's impact on various outcomes, particularly in organizational settings. Meta-analyses have found positive correlations between EI and job performance, with correlations ranging from about 15% to 25%, indicating a small to moderate size of improvement. But a study by Talent Smart found that EI accounts for 58% of success in all types of jobs, highlighting its predictive power over IQ in certain contexts. Which leads us to the question, is emotional intelligence more important than IQ? It correlates with leadership effectiveness, with emotionally intelligent leaders better at motivating teams and fostering positive work environments, as noted in the Harvard Business School online content, Emotional Intelligence in Leadership. And recent studies, such as those during the COVID-19 pandemic, show EI's role in coping strategies, mediating relationships with well-being and psychological distress. There's also some reports that emphasize EI-related skills like empathy, active listening, and leadership as top in-demand skills from now through 2027, especially as AI can't replace jobs requiring human judgment and emotional intelligence. A side note here, two of the most powerful predictors of success in a job are IQ and the personality trait of conscientiousness. However, we cannot discount the power of strong emotional intelligence skills in navigating. If you're high in IQ and you're high in conscientiousness, you still need to know how to navigate those social environments. So it's not one being more important than the other, but they all work together to make exceptional leaders. Now, in spite of its scientific foundation, EI faces criticisms, especially when we're talking about measurement. Self-report tests for trait EI are prone to bias, as individuals with low EI may overestimate their abilities, and emotion-based questions often lack a single correct answer, making measurement difficult. Professor Igor Grossman notes that measurement requires expensive methods that many are unwilling to pay for and relies on flawed self-reports. And this is an issue when it comes to many organizations because the best tests are very expensive, and most organizations are not willing to pay the top tier prices for these assessments. And so they'll look for something that does the same thing, but at a lower price point. There's also debate over whether EI is a distinct form of intelligence, with some arguing it overlaps with personality traits like the Big Five and others contesting the ability model's validity as a form of intelligence like IQ. So these controversies highlight the need for ongoing research to refine definitions and measurement tools. Recent research, such as Gilead et al., proposes that EI comprises an emotion knowledge component and an emotion processing. As we said, EIP involves rapid bottom-up processing, measured by tasks like fine-grained discrimination of emotional expression. So being able to determine the expressions on a person's face and really analyze those in detail to figure out what is going on with that person, what are they feeling. 75% of employers use EQ as a gauge for promotions, which reflects its increasing importance in interconnected workplaces. And future directions include improving measurement through IRT-based methods, exploring neurological correlates with advanced imaging, and addressing cultural and gender differences in EI scores, which will ensure a more comprehensive and scientific understanding. So this detailed exploration confirms that EI is a scientifically grounded concept with significant implications for psychology, neuroscience, and more importantly for us, organizational behavior. So if we understand its models, its measurement, its neurological basis, and evidence, we can appreciate EI's role in personal and professional success, aligning with the user's interests and the online course's educational goals. That concludes this lesson. So read the resource in the next section, try the exercise, and then it's on to our final lesson in this module.